yeah, it haunts me.
A chilling secret buried deep.
On the barrels, it's a chemical type Agent Orange.
Soldiers who stayed silent for more than 30 years. Nobody believed them.
They hid it, they lied about it, and they're still lying about it.
Until now.
Shoot shut up! Shoot shut up!
So we are not prepared at this point to say that the allegation is untrue.
Did simple actions from long ago leave behind a legacy no one could have imagined?
I'm Tammy Leitner reporting from Seoul, South Korea, and welcome to this CBS 5 Investigate special uncovering toxic secrets. It started with a simple confession, a Valley man wanting to clear his conscience. And it ends here, a half a world away, with allegations of a government cover-up, people possibly being sick from a toxin that's long been forgotten, and one man just wanting to make things right.
The story begins in a tiny ramshackle trailer in Apache Junction with one man, a self-proclaimed outcast, a biker, more comfortable on society's fringe.
Why I'm like I am is because I come home and I couldn't live with what I'd done.
Steve House can no longer bury his secret.
Nobody seems to give a shit, excuse my French, but nobody seems to care. I've wrote Senator McCain's office, I've told the VA about it, but yeah, it haunts me.
The year was 1978. Steve House was stationed at Camp Carroll in South Korea. He was just 22, but soon entrusted with a covert assignment.
They handpicked us.
There were 6 of them. The soldiers were ordered to wear gas masks, but didn't after several of them suffered heat exhaustion. House, a heavy machinery operator, says he dug a ditch nearly the length of a city block. And what happened next?
They started bringing out truckloads of 55-gallon drums, 4 to a skid. OD green, Army green 55-gallon drums with bright yellow. Some of them had bright orange writing on them. Some of the cans, it said Province of Vietnam, compound orange.
A chilling confession. Considering the toxic defoliant was used during the Vietnam War to wipe out entire jungles. It was also sprayed in Korea along the DMZ, which divides the North from the South. The herbicide was so harmful that the government says the excess Agent Orange was incinerated at sea.
There was a smell, I couldn't even describe it. It was just sickly sweet, I guess.
We traveled across the U.S. to track down the other soldiers involved and to investigate whether a deadly toxin the government says was burned at sea could have secretly ended up buried on a U.S. military base in Korea.
Had a stripe around the barrel, dated 1967 for the Republic of Vietnam.
He said, "You're not going to believe this." He said, "I got a whole truckload of Agent Orange."
And we were like, why is this in Korea? What is this?
Robert Travis says he transported the drums from a hazardous materials storage warehouse known as the War Depot Zone to the ditch where they buried the leaking drums.
The barrels I remember seeing were dated 67, this was 78, and already eaten through metal. I figure it's ate through most of the drums.
At the time, Travis had no idea of the lasting effects of Agent Orange, and neither did the others.
My foot swelled up basically overnight and I couldn't walk, and that's when my trouble started.
Richard Kramer served alongside House and Travis. That's him wearing tennis shoes because his feet went numb while on the secret burial. Eventually, he says, he collapsed and had to be flown to a military hospital where he stayed for 2 months. But oddly,
all my medical records from Walter Reed came up missing.
Everybody in that same platoon that we can get a hold of has no medical records.
That's too coincidental.
Another coincidence? All 3 of these men are extremely sick with illnesses known to be caused by Agent Orange exposure.
I had a rash all over my body. It was just red rash. Yeah, it's never totally went away.
I have a swelling of the ankles and toes. I have chronic arthritis in my back.
Then the diabetes started coming up, and I've had problems with skin rashes.
They say a direct result of what they buried on this base more than 3 decades ago.
Did what I told to do, and that's the military way, do what you're told.
I served my country for 8 years, but out of those 8 years, for at least a week, I was a guinea pig. The least I could do is take care of it. but they're not going to.
We basically buried our garbage in their backyard. That ain't right.
Steve House was just a young man the first time he set foot in South Korea, and he says he was just following orders when he buried several hundred drums of Agent Orange. And though it was many years ago, this Valley veteran says the memories are still fresh, and the time to return was now.
A little nervous.
This former soldier has reason to be nervous.
33 years. Long time.
The last time Steve House was in South Korea, he says he secretly buried a deadly toxin on a U.S. military base. And he's well aware of how many unsuspecting soldiers and Koreans may have been exposed. But he wants to make things right with this long overdue homecoming. The Korean media has covered this story fervently since we broke it.
What was it like coming back here?
A lot of the feelings come back.
Steve's confession and our investigation triggered an international controversy that could affect U.S. relations with Korea. For the last 3 months, protesters have taken to the streets outside Camp Carroll. Banners criticizing the U.S. surround the base. A joint investigative team of high-ranking U.S. military and Korean officials have been testing the soil and water on and around the base for months.
This was the first area that was tested. You can see this is from the grid. They drilled in this area in about 40 different spots, trying to determine if Agent Orange is buried here.
What was found? Dioxins, the most toxic part of Agent Orange that has been tied to cancer and child deformities. But the Army says the dioxin they found is not linked to Agent Orange. They did find, though, that the water off base is contaminated with potent industrial solvents. As a result, at least one well was sealed off. And for the first time, the military admitted burying more than 100 toxic chemicals, pesticides, and defoliants in 1978. We're told these toxins and 60 tons of soil were dug up and removed the following year, although there is no record. This is the moment Steve House has wanted, but also dreaded for so long.
Approximately about a semi and a half.
He studies a map of the area while surrounded by 24 U.S. and South Korean officials, and in just 20 minutes, it's over. The veteran who flew all the way across the world to identify the exact spot where he says he buried Agent Orange is not allowed to walk the heliport or even given time to get his bearings after not having been on the base for 3 decades. But Steve tells us they won't find remnants of Agent Orange where they're currently digging, because he says the military is looking in the wrong spot.
He did provide information, additional information on location where he claims to have made a trench that Agent Orange was subsequently buried in.
Colonel Joseph Birchmeyer heads the joint investigative team looking into the Agent Orange claim and says after Steve's visit they plan to dig in the new location Steve identified.
You guys have said that you have not found any Agent Orange, but you've never come out and said this didn't happen.
No, until if we could make that claim that this did not happen, the investigation would no longer be proceeding. So we are not prepared at this point to say that the allegation is untrue or it didn't happen.
But in fact, for nearly 20 years, the U.S. military did know this base was contaminated, but kept quiet. The military has been under pressure to release these reports since we started investigating. This military report shows there were numerous chemical spills on the base during the late 1970s. And 2 military studies show that there was widespread contamination of the aquifer throughout the base. Cleanup would have cost $93.8 million.
The Korean government was never notified of this. That feels like a cover-up.
Well, now we have to be a little bit careful here. There was indications that there was a TCE-PCE problem that we had to modify or we had to take actions at our wells to make sure that the drinking water was safe for the people living on the post. You're right. There was no indication that we notified the Korean government or the Korean people about that, and I can't really speak to why that occurred.
But for one veteran, the time for answers has passed.
It brought back a lot of emotions because of the way I felt when I did it to begin with. You know, brokenhearted.
Now, he says, is the time for action.
Now that you've come and walked the base, do you think you'll finally be able to find some peace?
No. Because now I have to live with what they're finding downstream.
So the question becomes, what about the families, the children, and the people living near the military base? What we found in just one afternoon surprised us. That story is coming up as the CBS 5 Investigates special continues.